Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Between Two Friends. Today, I have a semi-famous guest with me, Jordan Barrocas. I started a brand called Three Jerks Jerky, grew it like crazy, was on Shark Tank, and then there's a lot of behind the scenes stuff that developed that maybe we could talk about some of it, maybe we can't. So Jordan, the serial entrepreneur, welcome, man. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
What season and episode, if you remember, were you on in Shark Tank?
Season 8, episode 5.
Okay.
There's a small chance it was season 5, episode 8, and I'm just being dyslexic.
That's all right. And it was for a brand called Three Jerks Jerky.
Yeah, Three Jerks Jerky.
Yeah. So tell us about the company
Yeah.
and then how you ended up on Shark Tank, the whole thing.
So I started this beef jerky company. I was just like messing around in my kitchen. I love to cook. I cook a lot. And started making beef jerky. And a buddy kind of had an idea that like he saw some premium beef jerky products starting, like craft beef jerky out of Brooklyn, and it was kind of all garbage. So I was like, yeah, I think I could make better jerky. And I had the idea to make it out of filet mignon, which is like kind of wacky. And I went for it, and it was really good. Next thing you know, we're like refining, making jerky every night after work. Turned my apartment into like a meat processing plant. My landlord was very happy. And a couple months afterwards, I just went for it, quit my job, and started a Kickstarter. And we just hit the ground running and like came out of the gate super strong. It was really successful. And like next thing you know, we're like, selling beef jerky and going door to door with backpacks. And the brand took off. It was super cool.
And how old were you at the time?
I was in my late 20s.
You said you quit your job, right? But
Yeah.
was it because you were at the break-even point because you were making enough just to pay your rent?
So no, like I was working in the shoe industry. I was running a business for a guy, and it wasn't panning out the way I had hoped. So I was like eager to leave and do something else. I basically had cash reserves enough to like launch the jerky business because it was super grassroots, and so I quit what I was doing, launched the jerky business, and then on the back burner started doing other stuff in the shoe industry to kind of offset cash.
Okay.
So,
yeah, just pure hustle. I mean, you're pouring everything back into marketing and trying to cut deals and whatnot. So that it sounds like, just the true grind. And
it was a proper like old school hustle. Like,
yeah.
I'll tell you the story on our first like retail sale because it was funny. We took a trip to New York City to just go door to door to stores, trying to see who would carry our beef jerky. And this was before we were kind of running through any kind of commercial production. And we have a little printout with our sales sheet and samples, and we're just knocking on every door. And my business partner at the time was like, "Hey, you should check out this spot. It's called Italy. It's like the most awesome food store on the planet. We're not sure it'll be right for you guys, but let's go look." So we walk in and we're like, this would be so cool. It's like the best store ever. So we tried to find who would be in charge of like meat, and like everyone just kept saying no. Like, no one, we're not bringing jerky into this store. No way. We just wouldn't take no for an answer. We're like, well, but do you make that decision? And everyone's like, well, no, but I just can't, I don't see it. I was like, well, who makes that decision? Can we talk to that person? So finally we got to the manager of like the meat and cheese counter, and we're like, hey, we got this thing. It's filet mignon beef jerky. It's really good. And he's like, what? Let me try that. So we give him samples. He was like, all right, I'll get back to you. The next day we're in Brooklyn, like wandering the streets, seeing who might want some beef jerky. And I get a phone call, and it's the guy from the meat counter at Italy. He's like, all right, so everyone loves it, and we want to bring it into the store, and we'll take 3 cases. And I said, okay, how many bags of jerky in a case? and, and like, that's how we kind of launched.
Wow. I love that. For people like Wyatt, I don't know anyone in the industry. Like, you just started banging on doors, and I respect that so much because you didn't know how to make the jerky. You didn't know how many.
You almost have to know to be like an entrepreneur, right? Like not necessarily like a business owner, but to be an entrepreneur, like you need to have that. If I knew anything about making beef jerky and anything about the food industry, there's not a chance I would have started that company. There's not a chance I would have made beef jerky out of filet mignon.
Right.
Like no way, you know. I needed to know nothing. I needed to be like completely naive, because you know the more experience you get, I think in certain things, the more gun shy everyone becomes.
How did you go from making it in your apartment to, like you said, like the commercial? Because that's a huge step. Or
So
did
we needed to find, right? We needed to find a co-packer, which is in the food industry, a manufacturer. They're called co-packers. Originally, I thought we'd make it all ourselves until I learned that there's like USDA requirements and
yeah, right.
like there's a whole bunch of crap.
Yeah.
So that went out the door. We're like, all right, so we got to find someone to make it for us. And we were living in Southern California at the time. So like we had no idea how to find a manufacturer. So we found a list of USDA facilities, sorted it for beef jerky, and then just started calling every single one that was within a distance that we could drive to. You know, we started calling every single one, and everyone told us to take a hike, that we're crazy, that they're not making beef jerky out of filet mignon. And the one that said, oh, okay, if you pay me, I'll do it for you, is the one we went with.
Okay.
And that started our relationship with our manufacturer, right? They were the first ones who would take our call and not hang up.
Okay, so then tell us about the Shark Tank experience. How did you get on? You know, what happened?
So I did. I'm from Miami. I did business school at University of Miami, and I just got an email saying, "Hey, we have a Shark Tank audition." And I remember I told my business partner, "Look, there's this Shark Tank thing. I'm like super busy today. Like, do you think I should go?" And he was like, "Yeah, why don't you just go?" So I went and like read the requirements on the car ride there and like figured out a little pitch in my head. It was like I did zero preparation.
Right.
And, I get in and I do my pitch, and one of the like they're casting people, right? So one of the casting directors was like, "Wait a second, I've seen that in LA." And I was like, "Okay, yeah." And then I got a call back, and then from there it was like a handful of months of pretty rigorous casting. So that whole process was about 6 months. And we kind of just took an approach of like, we know this is a TV show, so we got to make ourselves interesting. We have to make the story interesting. It's not just about the business. It's about what's going to make good TV. And then we got there, and the filming. I mean, filming is interesting because they say, you know, out of everything they film, you know, 30 to 40% is what makes it on air. So just because you're there, just because you film, doesn't mean you're going to get on TV.
Right.
We came out there and all but one of them were kind of negotiating with us and kind of in the deal.
What were you guys asking for?
It was reasonable. I think it was like 50 grand for 20% or something like that. So we ended up like negotiating everyone down to our ask, which was pretty unique. And we kind of had to pick them to decide which shark we wanted to go with. They were all on the table except Mark Cuban. He was the one that said, "I'm not interested." He did say he was going to be a customer, that he liked the product, but wasn't into the business.
Yeah.
And we ended up going with Damon John. It was kind of one of those gut things. Like we didn't go in there knowing who we would want to go with. Mark Cuban behind the camera kept pointing to Damon John, like, pick him. So we kind of like followed that a little bit and just had a good gut feeling about him.
Because like you said, so much is filmed and so little makes it, you know, on the actual show. But is it really like that when it comes down to making a decision? Because the show makes it seem like you've got almost no time, you know, to make the call. Is it truly like that when you have to
short answer, yes. The thing is like total hot seat. It was the most pressure packed thing I've ever done. I mean, you're there, it's one take, lights shining on you, you're sweating, you're in this audience of like, you know, entrepreneur gods, at least so you think, right? And yeah, it's like it's one take, one go. You fuck up, you're dead. There's no take a minute to do math, you know, having to do math in my head on the spot, having to negotiate, having to like respond quickly. You know, things just kind of go into automatic, right? You just go into instincts, and that's what it was like.
Yeah, that's crazy. Makes a lot of sense, though. I mean, the pressure, like things happen so fast. The more the pressure, right, in your brain is.
Yeah. It was cool though, because that to that extent, it was like one of the coolest things I've ever done. Like to be in that moment and to have to perform. I think we did pretty well, and if everyone goes back and watches the episode.
So what happens behind? Because that's what we see on camera, right? But then you're not signing, the agreement right then.
Well, yeah, I mean, the only thing like you sign then is to say whatever happened on TV doesn't count.
Right.
And they say it's a TV show, nothing's binding, nothing's real. You may or may not even air. You may or may not go through with this deal. Basically, what you just did was film a TV show.
Yeah.
Which is a little, they prep you for that. They make it clear, like, you go into that knowing it, but it is a little bit of a shock. So Damon John, I linked up with him a couple weeks after filming. He was in Miami, and we got together and like started talking business. And I asked him some points on the deal, and he's like, "Whoa, all right, let me stop you right there. Like, we're not doing that deal." I said, "Okay." Because I don't want equity in your business. I'm not giving you cash. I'm not giving anybody cash. I've never made money if I give cash. So we're going to do a royalty.
Okay, a royalty. Got it.
I was like, yeah, okay, that's a little bit different. So he kind of said, this is the way I do things. So we ended up doing a royalty deal, and the deal was that he's got a big sales organization. They can help kind of build out our distribution network, and they get paid a commission for it. I mean, I thought that was pretty straightforward. I got to keep all the equity, and if they did anything for us, they got paid. That was fun, that was fine. And then we air on Shark Tank and just explode, right? We did $1 million of beef jerky sales in a day and a half. I mean, it was like record breaking for Shark Tank. And then we had some issues scaling, right? We couldn't keep up with demand. We were late on product, pretty standard stuff. That's where like the business kind of got sideways.
When you say sideways, you no longer own Three Jerks Jerky, right?
At this point, I do.
You
At
do?
This point,
okay.
Yeah. But we got approached to do a new deal. And the new deal was to partner with Damon John and a operating business that he had a relationship with, which was a very large meat processing company. And the deal was going to be that they will handle the supply. They will handle pretty much the financing of the business. We got to be the faces of the business. And that would allow us to keep growing and scale, because they would fix our supply chain issues and improve the product, yada, 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 all that crap. So I said, okay, well, what are the terms? And I said, well, we want to be 50-50. You and your partner are 50%, and me and this other business are 50%. And I said, okay, and do you have an idea of valuation? And they said, oh, no, we don't do it that way, right? Like, we're going to do all the work. You're not going to have to do anything. We're not going to pay for the equity. We're just going to partner and essentially put in the sweat. So that doesn't sound really, normal.
Yeah.
And then it was, well, you don't know what you're doing. You're young. You're still in your 20s. You've never seen this before. If you want to grow, you got to trust me. We got a call saying Shark Tank wants to film a second segment, one of these update segments, saying, here's what you're doing today. But in order for them to do that, we got to get at least a term sheet signed and a deal inked out. And by the way, this has to happen in a week. We ended up doing this deal, which we thought was going to be the greatest thing to keep us growing at the same rate, and it just crushed the business. The partnership wasn't right. It was structured poorly. We made no money from that point on. The business ran out of loss. We kind of got nothing out of it. We stopped growing, and it just didn't pan out. It was a bad deal we did. Tremendous learning lesson. So we tried to make it work for almost 2 years, and at that point, I said, look, this doesn't make sense. I got to pursue other opportunities. I appreciate it, but it's just not panning out. I and my partner owned Three Jerks Jerky and all the Three Jerks IP, right? And then this operating business and Damon John created an entity, a partnership. So there's two partnerships that joined in a JV, another partnership. We contributed IP, so the new partnership owned the IP. When I left, we converted our equity in the partnership into a royalty. So that's the way we kind of structured the exit for like ongoing cash flow. And then that partnership dissolved and folded into the operating business. Okay. So, but the growth stopped, and what could have been like a massive business kind of just turned into something small and whatever. Yeah.
So where is Three Jerks Jerky still sold now? Well, you know what?
I have no clue.
Okay.
I'm like, I moved on completely, right? Like aside from the royalty check that arrives late, supposed to be every month, I get it like every 3 months. Besides the royalty check,
Right.
I don't care. Yeah.
Wow. So listen, I really appreciate your candor today and
Yeah.
being open with
Yeah.
us. Because you know there's what you see on TV, then there's the
Yeah.
reality.
In those early stages, things are happening so quick, and it's like without the experience to know, like, hold on a second, if we slow down, we'll be okay. Like just because they say this is going to happen doesn't mean it will. I'm okay to say, like, it's okay to say no to things. Like to me, I didn't think I could say no to a thing. And I had this attorney be like, hey, I see a lot of red flags in this structure. It looks like everyone's getting paid but you. And I'm like, yeah, but if I say no, we're gonna die, right? Like my whole world will end if I don't do this.
Right.
And that's just not having the experience. So it's a necessary experience. It sucks. Like I wish that business panned out, and I have a high degree of certainty if I didn't do that deal and I had just ran it myself and built the business with me, my partner, and did it our way, like it would be much more successful. But you got to go through those moments to have that confidence.
Yeah, there's really no experience. I should say there's no substitute for experience, because it's like I think we all say if we only knew then what we know now, but
Yeah.
you can't know it even with great advice unless you go through it yourself. So it's
And
unfortunate
look,
that it turns
good
out that way sometimes.
good decisions come from experience, and experience comes from bad
Bad
decisions.
decisions, exactly. But this is important, I think, for people to hear, because you're going to make mistakes, right? You're going to fail or at least fall, and people allow others to overreact to their failures. And I'll tell you, even small failures, some people jump on and capitalize, or
Right.
on the pressure, on the timing, and you got to move, you got to move. And it's
Yeah.
okay to take a step back and say, I need more time. I need to evaluate this, even though making quick decisions helps, right?
Every mistake, I mean, generalizing, but like most of the mistakes I can think of I made where I'm like, shit, I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Or because I rushed and stuff. And like I felt like I needed to make decisions too quickly and just didn't have the patience to like slow down.
Look, not everything's sunshine and roses. I don't
Yeah.
do this podcast to end on like a, hey, and this turned out so great. This is a real life story and a learning lesson. You mentioned the shoe business, so you're back in a big way.
Back in the shoe business. And I never was really out of it. I grew
Okay.
up in the shoe business. I mean, I was born in a shoe factory. There's an industry saying, I was born in a shoebox. So I grew up in a shoemaking family. I'm third generation shoemaker. So I've been around it my whole life and back in it now. We make shoes for Walmart primarily. So we do a lot of volume, private label footwear for them. We're expanding now. Trying to put a deal together with Target. It's not complete, but I'm hopeful that will happen, and looking to launch some direct to consumer branded stuff. So doing different things in the shoe industry. We've done pretty well there. So I think a lot of the learning lessons, right, from the jerky business, the big picture macro level entrepreneurial lessons, like totally apply to what I do today. And I think a lot of the success is because of that.
I mean, that experience is invaluable to
Yeah.
you as a business person. So what would sort of you say general entrepreneurial advice to the 28-year-old who is gung ho about something, or to anyone who wants to be on a Shark Tank type show or situation?
At the show. So the first thing I'd say is like be realistic. It's a television show. Personality is critical, and do your homework. Like for us, I watched every single episode of Shark Tank prior to us, every single one. I knew how the show worked. I knew what type of questions they asked. And I knew my business. I mean, if you're running your own company, you're going to know your business. Like you should. Otherwise, like, what are you doing? But the key thing is just being prepared. It's like anything else, the more prepared you are, just kind of the more natural things can be. You had to have a good story, had to make it fun, had to make it entertaining, and then also just have enough of a business acumen to be realistic.
Right. So you got to be fun, entertaining, be attractive as a business owner, right? You
Yeah.
don't too over the top, somebody that
Yep.
they're going to trust and want to work with, so that you make it on air and potentially get a deal. I can't thank you enough, my friend, for
Yeah, of course.
opening up and sharing with us.
Yeah.
And best of luck on. I
Yeah.
know you'll continue to kill it
Cool.
with your current business and new deals in the future.
Cool. Thanks, Brett.
All right, man. Take care. Thank you.
Bye.